Daniel was having one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. His delivery van had broken down that morning, costing him 2 hours of work time he couldn't afford to lose. His phone battery was dying and he'd forgotten to pack lunch again, but none of that mattered when he saw his son waiting for him outside the community center. "Dad!" 6-year-old Tommy came running, his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. His face was covered in paint from art class and he was grinning from ear to ear. "Hey, buddy, looks like you had fun today," Daniel said, kneeling down to help wipe some of the blue paint off Tommy's cheek. "I made you a picture. It's you and me as superheroes." Daniel's heart squeezed. Superheroes. If only Tommy knew how far from a superhero his dad really was. Just a guy trying to make rent, working 2 jobs and hoping the car would last another month. They started walking toward the bus stop, Tommy chattering away about his day. The afternoon sun was still bright and the downtown streets were packed with people rushing home from work. Cars honked. Someone was selling flowers on the corner. A street musician played guitar nearby. Just another ordinary Tuesday in the city. That's when Daniel heard it. The screech of tires. That awful sound that makes your stomach drop because you know something bad is happening. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. A big black car, the expensive kind with shiny chrome and tinted windows, came swerving around the corner. The driver was clearly trying to avoid hitting another car, but he overcorrected. The sedan jumped the curb and crashed straight into Old Man Peterson's fruit stand. Oranges and apples exploded everywhere, rolling across the sidewalk like colorful bowling balls. The wooden stand splintered into pieces. But worse than that, much worse, smoke started pouring out from under the hood of the car. People started screaming. Some ran away. Others stood frozen, their phones already out, recording. Daniel heard someone yell, "Call 911." But nobody was moving toward the car. Then he heard it. A child crying inside. Daniel's body moved before his brain caught up. He grabbed Tommy's hand and pulled him toward Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who ran the convenience store on the corner. "Stay with her. Don't move," he ordered, his voice firm in a way Tommy rarely heard. "Dad, what are you?" But Daniel was already running toward the crashed car, his heart hammered in his chest. The smoke was getting thicker and he could smell gasoline. That was bad, really bad. Through the cracked window he could see a little girl in the back seat. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, with dark curls and a pink dress. She was screaming, pulling at her seatbelt with tiny hands that didn't know how to work the buckle. Her face was red and wet with tears. "Help! Someone help!" she shrieked. Daniel tried the door. Locked. Of course it was locked. These fancy cars had all their doors lock automatically. He looked around frantically for something, anything to break the window with. "Use this." A construction worker tossed him a small hammer from his belt. Daniel caught it and didn't hesitate. He slammed it against the window. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the glass shattered into 1,000 pieces. He used his jacket sleeve to brush away the sharp edges, not caring that some cut through to his skin. "It's okay, sweetie. I've got you," he said, trying to keep his voice calm even though his hands were shaking. The smoke was so thick now he could barely breathe. The little girl looked at him with terrified eyes. "I want my mommy." I know. We're gonna get you to your mommy. But first we need to get you out of here, okay?" He reached in and unclipped her seatbelt. His fingers fumbled with the mechanism and every second felt like an hour. Finally it clicked open. He pulled her through the window, careful not to let her touch the broken glass. The moment he got her out, he heard a whooshing sound. Flames burst from the front of the car, bright orange and hungry. The heat hit his face like he'd opened an oven. Daniel clutched the little girl to his chest and ran. He made it about 20 feet before his legs gave out, and he dropped to his knees on the sidewalk. The little girl was sobbing into his shoulder, but she was breathing. "She was okay. You're safe now. You're safe," he kept repeating, more to himself than to her. Behind them, someone had a fire extinguisher and was spraying the car. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. People crowded around, everyone talking at once. That was incredible. "He saved her life." "Did you get that on video?" Daniel barely heard them. His hands were shaking and his lungs burned from the smoke. He checked the little girl over carefully. A few small cuts from the glass, but nothing serious. She'd have some bruises from the impact, but she'd be okay. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily." She hiccuped between sobs. "That's a beautiful name." "I'm Daniel." "You were very brave, Lily." "I want my mommy," she said again, her bottom lip trembling. "The ambulance is coming and they're going to help you find her. I promise." That's when Daniel remembered Tommy. He looked around quickly and spotted his son still standing with Mrs. Chen. But the boy was jumping up and down trying to see through the crowd. The sirens were really close now. Daniel could see the flashing lights reflecting off the buildings. In about 30 seconds, there would be police everywhere asking questions, taking statements. They'd want his name, his information, and that's when the cold reality hit him. He had 3 unpaid parking tickets sitting in his glove compartment. They were old, really old, and the fines had doubled, then tripled. He'd been meaning to deal with them, but between paying rent and buying Tommy's asthma medication and keeping food on the table, there just hadn't been enough money. If the police ran his name, they'd see those tickets. They might even arrest him right there. And then what? Who would pick Tommy up from school tomorrow? Who would work his shifts? They couldn't afford for him to miss even a day of work, let alone spend a night in jail. His mind raced. He looked at Lily, who was calming down a little now that she was safe. He looked at Tommy, who was waving at him. He looked at the police cars pulling up to the curb. Daniel made a decision. Maybe not the right one, but the only one he could afford to make. He gently set Lily down on the sidewalk, making sure she was steady. A woman in a business suit immediately rushed over and knelt beside her. "I've got her," the woman said. "Thank you so much." "Who are you? What's your name?" I have to go." "Take care of her," Daniel said. He stood up and pushed through the crowd before anyone could stop him. He reached Tommy and grabbed his hand. "Come on, buddy. We need to go." "But Dad, the police are here. Don't you need to talk to them?" "You saved that girl." "I know, but we really need to leave. Now." Tommy looked confused, but he didn't argue. They started walking quickly away from the scene, Daniel's hand tight around his son's. Behind them, Daniel could hear Lily's voice carrying over the chaos. "Wait, where's the man? Where's the man who saved me?" Tommy turned to look back, pulling against his dad's grip. "Daddy saved you and ran," he called out to her, not understanding why they were leaving. Daniel's heart was pounding. His hands were still shaking. The cuts on his arms were starting to sting. But he kept walking, Tommy's small hand in his, away from the flashing lights and the questions and the complications he couldn't afford. He told himself he'd done the right thing. He'd saved that little girl's life. That's what mattered. The rest of it, the recognition, the thanks, the questions, none of that was important. Tommy was important. Keeping his job was important. Keeping a roof over their heads was important. But as they turned the corner and the sirens faded behind them, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that running away from something good might come back to haunt him in ways he couldn't predict. Tommy looked up at him with those big eyes that saw everything. "Dad, why did we leave?" Daniel didn't have a good answer. At least not one a 6-year-old would understand. Sometimes, kiddo, doing the right thing is complicated, and that would have to be enough. For now. Part 2, Victoria. Whitmore's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She gripped her phone so hard her knuckles turned white as her driver raced through red lights toward the hospital. Every second felt like an eternity. The call had come 20 minutes ago. Car accident. Lily was in an ambulance. Those were the only words that had registered before her entire world collapsed into a single point of terror. "Drive faster," she ordered, knowing they were already going as fast as safely possible. When they pulled up to the emergency entrance, Victoria didn't wait for the driver to open her door. She threw it open herself and ran inside, her heels clicking frantically on the hospital floor. She must have looked wild, her perfectly styled hair coming loose, her suit jacket askew, but she didn't care about any of that. "My daughter, Lily Whitmore. She was brought in from a car accident," she said breathlessly to the nurse at the desk. The nurse checked her computer. "Room 3, go through those doors and turn left," Victoria ran. When she burst through the curtain of room 3, she found Lily sitting on an examination table with a female paramedic beside her. Her daughter's face was streaked with tears, and there were a few small bandages on her arms, but she was alive. She was breathing. She was okay, Mommy. Lily burst into fresh tears and reached out her arms. Victoria grabbed her and held on like she'd never let go. She breathed in the smell of her daughter's shampoo mixed with smoke, and the tears she'd been holding back finally came. "I'm here, baby. Mommy's he. You're okay. You're okay." She must have repeated those words 100 times, more for herself than for Lily. The doctor came in a few minutes later and examined Lily thoroughly. Minor cuts from the broken glass. Some bruising that would fade in a week or 2. Mild smoke inhalation, but her lungs were clear. No concussion, no broken bones. Miraculously, incredibly, her little girl was going to be fine. She's very lucky, the doctor said. If someone hadn't pulled her out when they did. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Victoria felt ice run through her veins. She'd been in a board meeting when the accident happened. Her phone had been on silent. If things had gone differently, if that person hadn't been there, she might have walked out of that meeting to find out her daughter was gone. Who was it? Victoria asked. Who pulled her out? The paramedic shook her head. We don't know. By the time we arrived, your daughter was sitting on the sidewalk with a bystander. Several witnesses said a man pulled her from the vehicle just before it caught fire, but he left before police could get his information. He left? Victoria couldn't understand that. Why would he leave? People do strange things in emergencies, ma'am. Some folks don't like attention. But whoever he was, he saved your daughter's life. No question about it. After the hospital discharged Lily, Victoria took her home and stayed with her all night, watching her sleep, grateful beyond words. But by morning, gratitude had transformed into determination. She needed to find the man who saved her daughter. She needed to look him in the eye and thank him. She needed him to know what he'd given back to her. She called the police department first thing. Detective Morrison was assigned to the case, and he came to her office that afternoon with the traffic camera footage. We've reviewed everything we have, he said, setting up his laptop on her conference table. The angle isn't great, but we got some footage. Victoria watched the video play, the black sedan swerving, the crash, the smoke, then a figure running toward the car, a blur of movement and urgency. The quality wasn't good enough to make out facial features clearly. The man was wearing jeans and a dark jacket. He had dark hair. That was about all she could see, but what she could see clearly was the moment he pulled Lily out, the way he shielded her with his body as he ran from the flames, the way he knelt on the ground holding her, checking her over so carefully. Can you enhance it? Victoria asked. We've tried. This is as good as it gets. The man kept his face turned away from the cameras, probably not intentionally, just the angle he was at. And then he left before we could get there. We have a few witness statements, but they're not very detailed. Morrison pulled out his notebook. Several people described him as being in his 30s, average height and build. He was with a young boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. One witness heard the boy say something like, "Daddy saved you," and ran as they were leaving. Victoria felt something click into place. He had a son with him. What kind of father brings his child to see something like that and then just leaves? The kind who has a reason to avoid police, Morrison said gently. Ma'am, I don't want to speculate, but there are a lot of reasons someone might not want to stick around. Outstanding warrants, immigration issues, custody problems. Doesn't make him a bad person. He still saved your daughter. I don't care what his reasons were, Victoria said firmly. I need to find him. What can we do? We're canvassing the area, showing the footage to local businesses. Someone might recognize him, but Mrs. Whitmore, he clearly doesn't want to be found. We might have to accept that, Victoria shook her head. I can't accept that. I won't. That afternoon she called a press conference. Her assistant tried to talk her out of it, worried about publicity and security concerns, but Victoria insisted. She stood in front of a dozen cameras and spoke from her heart. 3 days ago, a stranger saved my daughter's life. He pulled her from a burning vehicle without hesitation, without thinking about his own safety. Then he disappeared before anyone could thank him. If you're watching this, please come forward. I'm offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to his identification. He deserves to be recognized. He deserves to know how grateful I am. The story went viral within hours. The footage of the rescue played on every news station. Social media exploded with speculation. Find Lily's hero started trending. Tips poured in by the hundreds, but none of them led anywhere. Every lead was a dead end. People claimed to know the man, to be the man, to have seen him, but nothing checked out. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Victoria threw more resources at the search. She hired a private investigator. She increased the reward to $100,000. Nothing worked. Her assistant, Patricia, finally sat her down for a hard conversation. Victoria, you need to let this go. You're becoming obsessed. The board is starting to worry. You've missed 3 important meetings. You're not sleeping. How can I let it go? Victoria demanded. This person saved my daughter's life, Patricia. My daughter. And I can't even find him to say thank you. Maybe that's what he wants, Patricia said softly. Maybe he did it because it was the right thing to do, not because he wanted recognition or money. It's not about the money. It's about... Victoria trailed off. What was it about? Yes, she wanted to thank him. But it was more than that. The accident had shaken something loose inside her. Made her realize how much she'd been missing while building her empire. She'd been working late the night of the accident. Again. She was always working late. Lily was being driven to a piano lesson that Victoria had scheduled but wouldn't attend because she had a conference call. How many moments had she missed? How many bedtimes and school plays and lazy Sunday mornings? And then some stranger, someone who probably had his own problems and complications, had risked his life for her child without a second thought. While she, Lily's own mother, hadn't even been there. Set up a meeting with the police again, Victoria said finally. I want to review everything one more time. Patricia sighed but nodded. She knew her boss well enough to know when to stop arguing. That weekend, Victoria did something she rarely did. She canceled all her meetings and spent the entire day with Lily. They went to the park, got ice cream, watched movies. Simple things. Normal things. Mommy, why are you being so nice? Lily asked at one point in that blunt way children have. The question hit Victoria like a punch. I'm always nice to you, sweetheart. You're always busy, Lily corrected. But today you're not checking your phone. Victoria's throat tightened. I'm sorry I'm busy so much. Mommy's going to try to be around more. I promise. It's okay. You have important work. You help lots of people. You're the most important, Victoria said, pulling her daughter close. Nothing is more important than you. I should have been there that day. But the nice man was there. He told me I was brave. I wasn't brave, Mommy. I was scared. What else did he say to you, honey? Can you remember? Lily thought hard, her face scrunching up. He said his name was Daniel. And he had a boy with him who had paint on his face. The boy said, Daddy saved you, and ran really loud. That was funny, Daniel. Victoria's investigator hadn't turned up any Daniels in the area who matched the description, but it was something. A name, a boy with paint on his face. These were real details about a real person who was out there somewhere, living his life. Probably not thinking about the woman who was looking for him. On Monday morning, Patricia came into Victoria's office with an unexpected suggestion. I think you need a break from all this. A real break. Go somewhere different. Clear your head. I can't take a vacation right now. I don't mean a vacation. I mean, get out of your bubble. You spend all your time in boardrooms and your office and expensive restaurants. When was the last time you went somewhere normal? Victoria wanted to argue, but Patricia had a point. Her world was very small, really. Very controlled. Very separate from how most people actually lived. What do you suggest? There's a diner 2 blocks from where the accident happened. Carmen's place. It's been there forever. Good food, real people. Maybe just go have lunch there. Be somewhere different. Who knows? Maybe someone there saw something. It was a strange suggestion, but Victoria found herself considering it. Maybe Patricia was right. Maybe she needed to step outside her bubble. Maybe answers weren't always found by throwing money and investigators at a problem. Okay, she said. I'll go. Patricia looked surprised that she'd agreed. Really? Really? Tomorrow. Alone. No driver, no assistant. Just me. I'll believe that when I see it, Patricia muttered, but she was smiling. That night, Victoria told Lily about her plan. You're going to a diner? Like in the movies? Lily's eyes went wide, exactly like in the movies. Can I come? Not this time, sweetie, but maybe soon. As Victoria got ready for bed, she looked at herself in the mirror. When had she become so far removed from normal life? She'd grown up middle class, working her way through college, starting her business from nothing. But somewhere along the way, success had built walls around her, protected her, isolated her. Tomorrow she'd take a small step back into the real world. And maybe, just maybe, she'd find some answers about the man who reminded her what really mattered. Part 3. The diner looked exactly like something from an old movie. Red vinyl booths, black and white sea. Heckered floor, a long counter with spinning stools. The smell of coffee and bacon hit Victoria the moment she walked through the door, and for a second she almost turned around and left. This was ridiculous. What was she doing here? She had a company to run, meetings to attend. Patricia's idea about getting out of her bubble seemed a lot less reasonable, now that she was actually standing in a diner in jeans and a sweater, feeling completely out of place. But before she could leave, a woman behind the counter looked up and smiled. She was probably in her 40s with warm brown eyes and dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her name tag said Rosa. Sit anywhere you like, honey. I'll be right with you. There was something so genuinely welcoming about her voice that Victoria found herself sliding into a booth near the window. The menu was laminated and sticky, offering everything from breakfast all day to meatloaf specials. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten at a place like this. Rosa came over with a pot of coffee. "First time here? Is it that obvious?" Rosa laughed. "A little, but that's okay. Everyone's a first-timer once. Coffee? Please." As Rosa poured, Victoria found herself studying her. There was something calm about her, something grounded. She moved efficiently but not rushed, greeting every customer like they were a friend. "What's good here?" Victoria asked. "Everything if you ask me. But if you want my recommendation, try the Turkey Club, my mama's recipe. Or if you're feeling breakfast, the pancakes will change your life." Victoria smiled despite herself. "I'll try the Turkey Club. Good choice. Coming right up." As Rosa walked away, Victoria looked around the diner. There was an elderly couple sharing a piece of pie, a group of construction workers laughing over burgers, a young woman studying textbooks while eating soup. Real people living real lives. When had she stopped seeing people like this? When had everyone become either an employee or a business contact? Rosa came back a few minutes later with the sandwich. It looked nothing like the artfully arranged food Victoria usually ate at business lunches, but the first bite was delicious. Actually delicious. Simple, honest food. Good? Rosa asked, refilling her coffee. Really good? You weren't kidding. Mama didn't raise no liar. Rosa wiped down the next table, but she didn't rush away. You look like you got a lot on your mind, if you don't mind me saying. Victoria was surprised at how much she wanted to talk to this stranger. Just trying to find someone. It's been harder than I expected. Someone you know? Someone I need to thank. He helped my daughter and then he disappeared. I've been looking for weeks. Rosa's expression shifted slightly just for a second, but Victoria caught it. Something that looked almost like recognition, quickly hidden. That's tough. People have their reasons for not wanting to be found sometimes. Doesn't mean they're bad people. I know that. I just wish I could tell him how grateful I am. Rosa nodded slowly. Maybe he already knows. Maybe that's enough for him. Before Victoria could respond, the door chimed and Rosa's face lit up. There's my favorite customers. Victoria turned to look. A man in his 30s walked in holding the hand of a young boy. The man looked tired, wearing worn jeans and a jacket that had seen better days. But his face brightened when he saw Rosa. Hey, Rosa, our usual table free? For you two? Always. The boy ran ahead to a booth in the corner, dropping his backpack onto the seat. The man followed, ruffling his son's hair as they sat down. There was something about the way they interacted, the easy affection between them that made Victoria's chest tight. Rosa brought them water without being asked. Tommy, how was school? Good. We learned about butterflies today. Did you know they taste with their feet? I did not know that. That's wild, buddy. The man, who Victoria assumed was the father, smiled. He's been telling everyone he meets about butterfly feet all afternoon. It's important information, Dad. Victoria found herself watching them. This ordinary father and son having an ordinary after-school snack at their neighborhood diner. The boy pulled out homework, and his dad helped him with math problems while they waited for their food. Simple, normal, beautiful in its simplicity. Rosa caught Victoria staring and came back over. Refill? Who are they? Victoria asked quietly. Rosa hesitated. Regular customers. Good people. Why? Just curious. They seem close. They are. That's Daniel and his boy Tommy. Lost Tommy's mom a few years back. Daniel works hard to give that kid a good life. 3 jobs, can you imagine? But he always makes time for homework and dinner. That's real love right there, Daniel. The name hit Victoria like electricity. The man from the accident had said his name was Daniel. Could it be? She looked more carefully. Dark hair, about the right height. And the boy, Tommy, had something smudged on his sleeve that could have been old paint. Her heart started racing. Could this actually be him? After all this time, could he just be sitting in a diner 2 blocks from where the accident happened? But before she could think about what to do, Tommy's voice carried across the diner. He was talking animatedly about something, gesturing with his hands. And then Dad broke the window and pulled the girl out, and there was fire everywhere. And I told her, Daddy saved you and ran. Because we had to leave really fast. Victoria's breath caught. That was it. That was exactly what Lily had told her. This was him. This was the man she'd been searching for. Daniel quickly shushed his son. Tommy, quiet down. That's not something we need to talk about here. But it was so cool. You were like a superhero. I'm just a regular dad. Now focus on your homework, okay? But Tommy was too excited to focus. The lady on TV said she's looking for you. She wants to say thank you. We should tell her where we are. Then we could get the reward money and fix the heater. Daniel's face went pale. Tommy, stop. We talked about this. We can't. He looked around nervously and his eyes landed on Victoria. For a moment, their gazes locked. Victoria saw recognition dawn in his eyes. He knew who she was. He'd probably seen her on TV and the papers. And from the look on his face, he knew that she'd just figured out who he was. Daniel stood up quickly. Come on, Tommy, we need to go. But Dad, we just got here. Rosa's making our food. We'll come back later. Come on. Tommy looked confused but started gathering his homework. Rosa appeared, concern on her face. Daniel, what's wrong? Your food's almost ready. I'm sorry, Rosa, we'll come back. I just remembered something I need to do. Victoria stood up too. Please wait, Daniel froze. His hand was on Tommy's shoulder, protective and tense. I really need to go, ma'am. You saved my daughter. Victoria's voice cracked. You saved Lily's life, and I've been looking for you for weeks. Please just give me 5 minutes. The diner had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. Daniel looked trapped, his jaw tight, his eyes darting toward the door. Rosa moved between them, her voice low but firm. Daniel, maybe you should hear her out. Rosa, 5 minutes. That's all she's asking. You can give her that. Daniel looked at his son, then at Victoria, then at Rosa. Finally, his shoulders sagged. Okay, 5 minutes. They sat back down in the booth, Tommy between his father and the window, Victoria across from them. Rosa brought over coffee for Daniel and hot chocolate for Tommy, giving Daniel's shoulder a quick, reassuring squeeze before leaving them alone. Victoria didn't know where to start. Now that she'd found him, all the speeches she'd rehearsed seemed inadequate. Thank you, she finally said. Thank you for saving my daughter's life. You risked everything to pull her out of that car. And then you left before I could even know your name. Daniel stared into his coffee cup. I did what anyone would do. No, you did what most people wouldn't do. Everyone else was standing around with their phones out. You ran toward danger to save a child you'd never met. She was scared. I have a son. I couldn't not help her. Why did you leave? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Tommy was watching his father carefully, sensing the tension. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I have some old parking tickets. I know that sounds stupid, but they've been piling up and I can't afford to pay them. If the police ran my name, they might have arrested me right there. And then who would take care of Tommy? I can't miss work. We can't afford it, so I left. I'm sorry if that was wrong. Victoria felt something break open inside her chest. This man had risked his life to save her daughter, then ran away because he was afraid of parking tickets. While she'd been in her penthouse office, he'd been worried about missing a day of work. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm the one who should apologize. All this time I've been looking for you. It never occurred to me that finding you might cause you problems. Lady, I appreciate you wanting to say thank you. I really do. But I can't take any reward money or be on the news or anything like that. I just need to take care of my son and keep my head down. That's all I'm trying to do. Tommy looked up at his father. But Dad, we need the reward. Our heater is broken and it's getting cold. Daniel's face flushed. Tommy, that's private. But it's true. And you're always tired because you work so much. Maybe the nice lady could help. Victoria saw the pride warring with desperation on Daniel's face. She'd seen that expression before in mirrors back when she was starting her company and too broke to eat properly but too proud to ask for help. Rosa came back over, reading the situation perfectly. Your food's ready. Why don't you eat while you... Oh, talk. Everything's better with a full stomach. She brought over plates and the smell of burgers and fries filled the booth. Tommy dug in immediately, but Daniel just stared at his food. I don't need charity, he said quietly. It's not charity, Victoria said. It's a thank you. It's me trying to figure out how to be even a fraction as decent as you were that day. I'm not decent. I'm just doing my best. Most days I feel like I'm failing. You're not failing. Your son clearly adores you. He's well-behaved, doing his homework. You're doing 3 jobs to provide for him. That's not failing. That's being a hero. Just a different kind than the one who pulled my daughter from a burning car. Daniel finally looked up at her, and Victoria saw the exhaustion in his eyes. The worry, The weight of trying to be everything for his child with no help and no safety net. I can't miss work to deal with legal stuff or interviews or any of that. I just can't. What if you didn't have to? What if I could help make those problems go away? Why would you do that? Because someone needs to help the person who helps others. Because you remind me of what actually matters. Because I've spent weeks looking for you, and now that I've found you, I'm not going to walk away and leave you struggling. Daniel shook his head. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. You gave me my daughter back. The conversation continued as they ate, careful and tentative. Victoria learned about Daniel's life, the 3 jobs, the struggle to pay bills, Tommy's asthma medication they sometimes had to choose between, and groceries. Daniel learned that Victoria wasn't just some rich lady, but someone who'd built her company from nothing and remembered what it was like to be scared and broke. Rosa watched from behind the counter, a small smile on her face. She'd known both secrets, Victoria realized. She'd known who Daniel was, and she'd kept quiet to protect him. But she'd also suggested Victoria come to this diner. Maybe she'd hoped they'd find each other on their own terms. By the time they finished eating, something had shifted. They weren't strangers anymore. They were 2 parents who'd been reminded of what really mattered, finding each other at exactly the right moment. Tommy yawned, leaning against his father's shoulder. Are you friends now? Daniel looked at Victoria, a question in his eyes. Victoria smiled. I'd like to be. If your dad wants that. I guess we'll see, Daniel said, but his voice was warmer now, less guarded. As they left the diner together, Rosa called out, Same time tomorrow? Daniel glanced at Victoria, who nodded. Same time tomorrow, he agreed. And for the first time in weeks, Victoria felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Part 4. The next 3 days were strange. Victoria kept coming back to the diner, and each time Daniel and Tommy were there. At first, the conversations were surface level. Safe topics, the weather, Tommy's school projects, Rosa's daily specials. But gradually, carefully, they started to peel back the layers. Daniel told her about his wife, how she'd died from an aggressive cancer when Tommy was only 3, how he'd been drowning in medical debt and grief, taking whatever jobs he could find just to stay afloat, how some months he had to choose between keeping the lights on or filling Tommy's prescriptions for his asthma. I'm not telling you this for pity, Daniel said one afternoon, spinning his coffee cup in his hands. I just want you to understand why I ran that day. I've built this fragile life, and anything that shakes it, even something good, feels dangerous. Victoria listened, really listened, in a way she hadn't listened to anyone in years. And she told him things, too, about how she'd missed Lily's first steps because of a business trip, how she'd built an empire but somehow lost sight of why she'd built it in the first place, how the accident had shattered something inside her, made her realize she didn't want to be the kind of mother who wasn't there. I thought I was giving Lily everything, Victoria said. The best schools, the best clothes, the best opportunities, but I wasn't giving her me. Not really. And then some stranger cared more about her safety in 10 minutes than I had in months of being too busy. That's not fair to yourself, Daniel said softly. You're a good mom. You're just figuring out how to be better. That's all any of us can do. Tommy and Victoria developed their own bond. She'd bring him books from Lily's collection that her daughter had outgrown. He'd show her his drawings, elaborate scenes of superheroes and spaceships that he'd spent hours creating. One day he made her a picture of her and Lily holding hands, with a sun in the corner and birds in the sky, and Victoria had to excuse herself to the bathroom so he wouldn't see her cry. Rosa watched it all with knowing eyes, bringing them food they didn't order and waving away Daniel's attempts to pay. You feed enough people for free, she told him. Let someone feed you for once. On the 4th day, Victoria brought up what they'd both been avoiding. Let me help you, she said. Please, with the parking tickets, with whatever else you need. I have lawyers who can make those problems disappear. I have resources, Daniel's jaw tightened. I told you I'm not taking charity. It's not charity. It is. Call it whatever you want, but it's still you giving me money because you feel obligated. I don't want that. Why are you being so stubborn about this? Because I've spent 3 years building a life where I take care of my son on my own, where I don't depend on anyone. If I start taking handouts now, what does that make me? It makes you human. It makes you someone who's allowed to accept help when it's offered. They'd reached an impasse, Victoria wanted to help. Daniel refused to be helped. And between them, Tommy kept doing his homework and eating his fries, pretending he couldn't hear them arguing. That evening, everything changed. Victoria had just gotten home when her phone rang. It was Rosa, and there was panic in her voice. "You need to come to the hospital. It's Tommy, his asthma." Daniel called me from the ambulance. Victoria's blood went cold. "Which hospital?" "St. Mary's, please hurry." Victoria grabbed her keys and ran. She made it to the hospital in record time, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. When she burst into the emergency room, she found Daniel sitting in the waiting area, his head in his hands. "What happened?" she demanded. Daniel looked up and his face was wrecked. Tears tracked down his cheeks. "We were at home and he started coughing. I gave him his inhaler, but it was empty. I didn't realize it was empty. I was supposed to refill it 2 days ago, but I had to work a double shift and I forgot. And now he can't breathe properly and it's all my fault." Victoria sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "It's not your fault." "Where is he?" "They're treating him now. They won't let me back there yet. They said his oxygen was too low. They said if we'd waited any longer..." His voice broke. They sat in that awful waiting room for an eternity. Daniel called Rosa, who promised to close the diner early and come. Victoria called her assistant and canceled everything for the next 2 days. Nothing else mattered except the little boy fighting to breathe behind those double doors. Finally, a doctor came out. "Mr. Thompson, your son is stable. We've got him on oxygen and medication. He's going to be fine." The relief was so intense that Daniel actually doubled over. "Can I see him?" "In a few minutes. We're moving him to a room now. But Mr. Thompson, his medication situation is concerning. The pharmacy record shows you've been delaying refills. Asthma isn't something you can take lightly." "I know. I'll do better. I promise." The doctor's expression softened. "There are programs that can help with medication costs. Talk to the social worker before you leave. We want to make sure this doesn't happen again." After the doctor left, Daniel turned to Victoria. His pride was gone, stripped away by fear and exhaustion. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. "I've been trying so hard to do everything on my own, and I almost lost my son because I was too proud to ask for help. Because I couldn't afford a $20 inhaler refill." Victoria felt tears on her own cheeks now. "Let me help, not because you owe me, not because I owe you, but because we're friends, and friends help each other. I don't know how to accept help. I don't know how to not be the one who has everything under control. Then we'll figure it out together. Because Daniel, you don't have to do everything alone anymore. You shouldn't have to." When they finally let them into Tommy's room, the little boy was sitting up in bed, an oxygen tube under his nose, looking small and scared. But when he saw his dad, his whole face lit up. "Dad, I'm okay. The doctors gave me really good medicine." Daniel rushed to his side, taking his hand carefully. "I'm so sorry, buddy. I'm sorry I forgot your inhaler." "It's okay. You forget things sometimes. You're always really tired." "That's not an excuse. I'm supposed to take care of you." "You do take care of me. You're the best dad ever." Victoria watched from the doorway, giving them space. She thought about Lily at home with the nanny, probably already asleep. When was the last time Lily had told her she was the best mom ever? When was the last time Victoria had been there at bedtime to hear it? Tommy noticed her and waved. "Hi, Mrs. Whitmore. I'm not dying." Despite everything, Victoria laughed. "I can see that. You scared us pretty bad, though." "Sorry. I didn't mean to." "Nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart." Rosa arrived an hour later with food for all of them, because of course she did. She sat with Tommy while Daniel and Victoria went to talk to the social worker, who gave them information about prescription assist, INS programs and emergency funds. But as they walked back to Tommy's room, Daniel stopped in the hallway. "I need to tell you something," he said, "about why I really ran that day. It wasn't just the parking tickets." Victoria waited, sensing this was important. "When my wife got sick, I was working for a company that laid me off 3 weeks before she died. I lost my health insurance right when we needed it most. I had to make choices about her treatment based on what we could afford. I kept thinking, if I just had more money, better insurance, a better job, maybe she'd still be here. Maybe I could have saved her." He took a shaky breath. "So when I saw your daughter in that car, I didn't think. I just acted. Because maybe I couldn't save my wife, but I could save this one little girl. And then I ran because I was terrified that if I got involved with police and legal stuff, I'd lose my jobs and end up in the same place all over again, unable to take care of my kid, unable to keep him safe. Victoria felt like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. Daniel, I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. It's not that I don't appreciate what you're trying to do. It's that I'm terrified. Terrified of depending on someone. Terrified of things falling apart again. Terrified that if I let you help and then something goes wrong, I'll be even worse off than before. What if things don't go wrong? Victoria asked gently. What if accepting help doesn't make you weak? What if it just makes you smart? Because Daniel, you can't keep working yourself into the ground. Tommy needs you healthy. He needs you present. He needs you to not be so exhausted that you forget things that matter. I don't know how to not do everything myself. Then let's start small. Let me pay for Tommy's medications, just that. You keep your jobs, your apartment, your independence. But let me make sure Tommy has what he needs to breathe. Can you do that? Daniel was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Okay, just the medications. For Tommy. For Tommy, Victoria agreed. They went back into the room where Tommy was telling Rosa an elaborate story about the ambulance ride, complete with sound effects. When he saw his dad, he held out his arms for a hug, and Daniel held him like he was the most precious thing in the world, which Victoria realized he was. She stepped out to call her lawyer. There had to be something more she could do, some way to help without making Daniel feel like he was losing control of his life. An idea was forming, but she'd need to think it through carefully. 2 days later, Tommy was released from the hospital with a new inhaler, a prescription for backup medication, and strict instructions about avoiding triggers. Daniel took time off from all 3 of his jobs to stay home with him, and Victoria could see the anxiety in his face about missing work. She came to visit them at their apartment for the first time. It was small, cramped. The heater was indeed broken, and there were dishes in the sink from yesterday. But it was clean where it mattered, and Tommy's drawings covered the walls, and there was love in every corner. I have a proposition for you, Victoria said after Tommy went to his room to play. And I need you to hear me out completely before you say no. Daniel crossed his arms, defensive. I'm listening. My company needs someone to oversee our supply chain operations. The person we have isn't cutting it. You've been doing delivery work for years. You know the city. You know logistics. You know how to solve problems on the fly. I've watched you manage 3 jobs and a kid's schedule with precision most of my executives couldn't match. I want to offer you the position. Victoria, that's exactly the kind of charity I was talking about. It's not charity. It's a real job with real expectations. You'd be working your tail off, trust me. But it would be 1 job instead of 3. With benefits. With insurance. With a salary that would let you fix your heater and refill prescriptions without choosing between them and groceries. I don't have experience in corporate logistics. You have practical experience, which is more valuable. I can teach you the rest. But Daniel, I need someone I can trust. Someone who isn't just in it for a paycheck. Someone who understands what real life looks like for real people. That's you. Daniel looked torn. This feels like you're creating a position just for me. I'm not. The position exists. It's been open for 3 months. I've interviewed 12 people and none of them were right. You'd actually be doing me a favor by taking it. And if I'm terrible at it, then I'll fire you like I would anyone else. But I don't think you'll be terrible. I think you'll be excellent. Tommy appeared in the doorway. Dad, is Mrs. Whitmore asking you to work for her? We're discussing it. You should say yes. Then you wouldn't be so tired all the time. And we could fix the heater, and maybe get a puppy. We're not getting a puppy, Daniel said automatically, but he was smiling slightly. Why not? I'm very responsible. Because puppies are a lot of work. You're always saying hard work is good. Using my own words against me already. You're 6 years old, Tommy. Almost 7. That's practically grown up. Victoria watched them banter, and she knew she had him. He was going to say yes. Not right now, maybe, but soon. Because he loved his son too much to keep wearing himself down to nothing. And because somewhere along the way he'd started to trust her. Think about it, she said. Take a few days. Talk to Rosa, but Daniel, this is real. This is me seeing your value and wanting to work with you. Not rescue you. Work with you. After she left, Daniel sat on his worn couch with Tommy curled against his side watching cartoons. His whole life he'd been the one doing the rescuing. Pulling people from burning cars. Pulling his family from poverty. Pulling himself from grief. Maybe it was time to let someone else help pull for once. Maybe that wasn't weakness. Maybe that was just wisdom. Dad? Tommy said sleepily. Yeah, buddy? I think you should take the job. Mrs. Whitmore is nice. And her daughter is nice, too. It would be good. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just notice now. Daniel laughed and hugged his son closer. Yeah. He was going to say yes. Part 5, 3 months later. Daniel sat in his new office and still couldn't quite believe this was his life. The office wasn't huge, but it had a window that looked out over the city, and a real desk and a computer that didn't take 5 minutes to boot up. More importantly, it had a small sitting area where Tommy could do homework after school while Daniel finished his workday. The job was hard. Victoria hadn't lied about that. Daniel was learning systems and software and corporate language that might as well have been foreign, but he was good at the core of it. The logistics, the problem-solving, figuring out how to get things from point A to point B efficiently. His real-world experience translated better than he'd expected. You're doing great, Victoria told him during one of their weekly check-ins. The team actually respects you, which is saying something. They eat new managers alive, usually. They tested me pretty hard the first few weeks, and when you passed, you treated them like people, not just employees. That matters more than you'd think. Daniel's salary meant they'd moved to a better apartment, one with heat that actually worked, and a second bedroom, so Tommy didn't have to sleep on the couch anymore. Tommy's medications were always filled on time, covered by the excellent insurance. They had groceries without having to calculate every item. It was like breathing after years of drowning. But the best part, the part Daniel hadn't expected, was the friendship. He and Victoria had lunch together twice a week, sometimes at the diner, sometimes at her office. They'd become real friends, the kind who told each other hard truths and celebrated small victories. Tommy and Lily had become inseparable. Every weekend they had play dates alternating between Victoria's penthouse and Daniel's modest apartment. Lily loved the normalcy of Daniel's place, how she could be messy and loud without worrying about expensive furniture. Tommy loved the games and books at Lily's place, though he always made sure Daniel knew he liked their home better. Rosa watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction. Her diner had become their unofficial meeting place, neutral territory where both families could just be themselves. I told you it would work out, she said to Daniel one afternoon. You knew before I did that Victoria would come to the diner that day, didn't you? Rosa just smiled mysteriously. Maybe I had a feeling. Maybe I just got lucky. Does it matter? You're a meddler. I'm a facilitator. There's a difference. Daniel laughed and left her a big tip, the way he did every time now. He could afford it, and Rosa had been there for him when no one else was. That Saturday, both families met at the park. It was one of those perfect autumn days, warm enough to be comfortable but with enough of a breeze to make the leaves dance. Tommy and Lily were on the swings, competing to see who could go higher. Be careful, both parents called out at the same time, then looked at each other and laughed. We're becoming boring parents, Victoria said. Speak for yourself. I was always boring. That's not true. You ran into a burning car. One time. And I told you anyone would have done that. Daniel, we've been over this. Not everyone would have done that. You're a hero. Accept it. Daniel shook his head, but he was smiling. They'd had this argument a dozen times. Victoria insisted he was extraordinary. Daniel insisted he was ordinary. They'd probably never agree. How's the new account going? Victoria asked. Good. We shaved 2 days off the delivery time, which the client Whoa.